Okay, in this video, again, we are continuing to work with while loops and for loops. Here's another example. We already did part one where I showed you how to write a while loop and then convert it to a for loop. In this case, I'm hoping we'll start with a for loop and convert it into a while loop. Okay, so write a console program. These are a little different. They're not quite straightforward for loops and while loops. So the straightforward for loops and while loops, I already have videos posted in D12 for that. These are slightly different, meaning they are not the standard for loops that we write, but it's also a teaching moment to show you that you can write for loops like this. And this is kind of how you take while loops and convert them to for loops and go back and forth, just so you know how to do it. So write a console program with a main function that prompts the user for numbers until the user types -1, okay, -1, then outputs the sum of the numbers. So here's an example output. Type a number, you type 10, 20, 30, and then when they enter -1, we stop. Okay, so include IOStream using namespace std. And let me start this out by saying, instead of, this is what we call a sentinel, right? A sentinel control loop. They enter some kind of a sentinel and we stop reading at that. Instead, let's start this by writing a for loop. Let's say the user will tell me how many numbers they want to enter. Okay, and let's start with that. So int count equals 0. That's the count that's going to keep track of how many numbers the user is going to enter. And user num, that's the number they're going to enter. And I'm going to have a sum because I want to add all the numbers. Okay, so my cout is going to say enter how many numbers you want to enter. Okay, that has too many enters. Enter the count of numbers you wish to enter. That's fine. Okay, cin that into count. Okay, now let's use a for loop. Okay, because we have a count, right? We know how many numbers they want to enter. This is a good application of a for loop. For, and I need something to go through the for loop, so I'm going to have an I equals 0. So I can come in here and say for I equals 0. We'll initialize it again. I less than count, which is the number of numbers that they enter, I plus plus. What do I want to do in there? I want to read user number, right? User num, that's what I said. The variable is that we're going to read from the user to store the number. And then I add, this is a summation loop. The summation loop because we add, every time they enter a number, we take that and add it to sum. You know, plus equals is a compound operator that does the same thing as sum equals sum plus user num, right? Okay, so now this is more like a counter control loop. Count control loop, that's what this is. Okay, so a for loop. For I equals 0, I less than count, I plus plus, read the number, add it, and finally when we come out, we say cout, and you print sum equals, and you print sum, right? Okay, and a very simple for loop. You read from the user. It is not quite a sentinel control loop that, like the question says up there, which I'm going to fix in a minute. So let's say I want to enter 3 numbers. Okay, then I didn't have any prompt, which is not good user interface, but we'll add a prompt. So I enter 3 numbers and says the sum is 60. So then really we should have a prompt here that says enter the numbers one at a time or something like that, right? So that is the prompt. Okay, and then it's going to go through the for loop. Now, the first thing I want to do is take this and change this into a while loop. How do we do that? Again, we've initialized I equals 0, so we don't have to do that again for the while loop, right? So all I need to take care of is this condition. So simply put that condition in a while loop. Remember, a while loop can only have the condition in there, while I less than count. What do I need to do with this update? I need to come here and I need to increment that I in there. So this will work exactly the same way because all I needed to do was put the condition in here in a while and increment the I there, and I already initialized I. Okay, so although I did put it in my for loop, I could have had my for loop like that with an empty statement, which we saw before. You could do that as well. So now if I run this, it should work exactly the same, although now I should get a nice prompt into the number of numbers, one number at a time, 1, 2, 3, three numbers, right? Okay. Now let's go and try and change this to our sentinel control loop. Okay, sentinel control loop would be to say, while or for, we're going to do it with both. I want to keep reading until the user enters -1. So no I, no more counter. No more asking them how many numbers they want to enter. I'm going to take that out. So no count. Okay, we're not going to ask them that. So now I'm going to convert this to a sentinel control loop. And we can have a constant for the sentinel. The global constants, right? Global constants. Const int, call the sentinel, equals -1. Okay, and it's an int. Okay, so now let's come here and say, in order to check in the while, I must read the number outside one time. Or I could set it to 0 and say while user num not equal to not equal to my sentinel, which is why I have that constant. See, let's copy and paste, it's easier. While user num not equal to sentinel, what do I want to do? I want to go in and read the user number. Let's add first. Since my starting number is 0, I will be okay by doing the addition. I'm just adding 0 to sum, which will result in a 0. No more I, that doesn't exist anymore. Let's take that out of there. Okay. Put that there. Okay. This is the same as saying sum equals sum plus user num. We know that by now. So we check to see if it is the sentinel. If it is not the sentinel, I take it and add it to that, which is my sum. Then I read the next number and I go through and do that. The minute I read -1, it's going to check, it's going to be sentinel, it's going to come out of there. Okay, so this is a while loop, sentinel controlled while loop that has no more of the I or the counter or any of that stuff. So if I put in -1, it's going to come out of there. If I put in 10, 20, 30, then -1, it says sum is 60, right? Okay, great. So that is a sentinel control loop. Now, how do I take the sentinel control loop and convert it to a for loop? Can we do that? Sure, we can. What goes inside the for loop is the question. I'm going to control that X out of there and I'm going to put it right here so it's easier. Okay, there's no I, right? There's no I. I'm going to take that out of there. There's no initial statement for me, which is okay. I can have an initial statement. But what is my condition? Let's take this condition and put it in here because that's really the condition, right? While user number not equal to sentinel. That's my condition. And we can put that inside the for loop. There's nothing that says I always have to have a condition with I. It has to be a condition. Okay. Now, what is my update statement that we have in the while loop? How long are we reading? We are reading until the user number that they enter is a -1. Can I put that in here? Sure. But should I take it out of here? Yes, we shouldn't have it in there. So the update statement is reading the number from the user. You can put that in the for loop as well. Is this how a normal for loop is done? Maybe it's not the norm. Most of the time, our for loops are written like our count control loop that we saw in the first part of this video, right? But is this legal? Is this going to work? Yes, sure, it's legal. So our starting point is user number equal to 0, which is done there. You could do that here as well if you chose to do that. But we initialized this when we created it, so that's fine. So it's an empty first statement, initializer statement. Condition is as long as it's not equal to sentinel, add user num to sum, read, check, add, read, check. The minute it is equal to -1, it's going to come out of there. So is it going to work exactly the same way? It should work exactly the same way. Okay. So let's say enter the numbers one at a time. 1, 4, 5. When I enter -1, it says sum is 10. And so there's no change in the output, right? The only thing that's different is I wrote a for loop instead of that while loop. So a couple of variations. Hopefully this helps you understand how to go back and forth between a while and a for.